Welcome, everybody. For those of you who don't know me, I am Daniel, one half of the Modern People Leader podcast. I've got my co-host Steven here with me, and today is going to be, I think it's going to be a really fun one. So, quick backstory of how today came together. Over the last couple of months, Steven and I kept seeing the same thing pop up on LinkedIn over and over again. And that was HR folks saying, there just aren't a ton of resources showing how HR teams are using AI. There's a lot of theory, but very little show and tell. So we thought, all right, let's just give the people what they want. And so that's what today is. Real practitioners walking us through exactly what they're doing and what they've built. And the cool part is whether you're just getting started with AI or you're deep into your journey, each of our guests has something that you can take and use right away. And we've got an incredible lineup today. So we have two return guests and we have one newbie to MPL. So Valerie, she's our newbie. She's the head of talent management at WorkLeap. And we've also got Jenny, the VP of people at Vercel, and Brandon, who is the chief people and AI transformation officer at Zapier, which by the way, like might be one of the coolest titles that I've ever heard. But before we jump in, we've got to kick things off with our favorite tradition on the show, and that's something called good news stories. So if you've listened to the podcast, you know the drill. We start every episode by sharing something good from the last couple of weeks. Could be personal, it could be work related. It's just our fun little icebreaker to kick things off. And since I'm already talking, I'm happy to get us started. So my good news is that I've officially survived the first 6 months of being a dad. So yesterday was my daughter's 6 month birthday, which is crazy. These first 6 months just flew by, and she's now doing all of the things. She's flipping over in bed, she's babbling, she's even got like a fake cry down. And so all of that to say, I'm soaking up every minute of Lena's baby phase, and I'm loving it. So that's my good news. And to keep things moving, I'm gonna pass it over to Jenny.
Yeah, that's a good one. I'll share a work one. So I've been thinking a lot about employer brand recently. We're hiring a ton at Vercel. We're in that situation where almost 50% of our employees have been hired in the last year. So you can't take for granted that the culture you had at the beginning will be the culture you have at the end. So how do we sort of memorialize some of the things that make Vercel's culture great? And I was very inspired by, if anybody saw from sort of many years ago, Facebook's Little Red Book created by the Analog Research Lab, that like poster studio that Facebook had in early days. We were inspired by that. We've pulled together a similar sort of culture book. And this is not my strength. I'm very sort of more of a data ops style leader. So it's good news for me that we've made a lot of progress. We're sending it to our final design review in the printers in later this week. So that feels exciting. And just if anybody else is looking for inspiration on employer brand, I've been really excited by what Heather Dunn over at Brex is putting out. They have some cool new videos around attracting founders to Brex. So very top of mind and some fun progress. And I think I hand it to Brandon.
Yeah, Brandon,
Yeah,
keep it going.
let's do it. Oh, goodness. That's a great one, Jenny. Uh, you know, there's a member of my team that started about 3.5 years ago who has taken on a new role on our team, and it's been just a thrill. Like, a lot of us are in the human development business, and so when you see like someone who's like brilliantly matched, with their superpowers, it's remarkable. And she's taking on a role that we're increasingly staffing at Zapier. We call AI automation engineer, and she was the very first one, and we did it on our own team here, the HR team, the people team. Um, and she's also doing customer facing work now, helping folks learn how to build AI agents for HR and recruiting and you name it. And anyway, it's like a win-win-win. You love seeing people like having a ton of impact on the business and just absolutely thriving as a person along the way.
Valerie, you want to go next?
Yeah, I'll go. Um, I'm going to share that. So we're a fully remote company, but twice a year we bring everybody who's across, Canada, the US, the UK, to Montreal for 3 days. One day is a leadership day, and 2 days is the whole employees, and it's my team that puts that together. And I'm really still on that high because we love the remote and the flexibility that comes with it, but it's so we feed off each other's energy so much during that day, and it's such an opportunity for people to really connect. So I'm still running on that energy, buzzing on that energy.
I love that. And I'm going to take an easy path out on good news. And like this session is my good news. Like the virtual sessions we do were my baby. A lot of the things at MPL that we've created are Daniel's and his inception. He kind of grew the child and fostered it to what it's become, mainly the podcast, like what, and everything starts and ends with the podcast. But these live sessions were actually my idea. And I've literally been geeking out about this event for weeks. And it's crazy to think about a couple of facts. First, we go back a couple years with Brandon and Zapier. Like Brandon, I literally in our async doc that Daniel and I use on our side, I was like, is this true? Because it like kind of blows my mind. I think we had you and Wade on our podcast last year, and you were the year before that. So it's always cool to have a kind of MPL goat back with us on the show. And Jenny, our episode that we recorded a few months ago, like I've been talking about it nonstop, and it just was such a great episode, and we'll probably make it on my favorite episodes of the year list. We do that. We'll be doing that in a few weeks, kind of our MVP list for 2025. And so, Valerie, I'm super excited to share the some time and space with you as well. And this is all on a topic that is very near and dear to me. I have had individual conversations with some of our panelists today about the concept of vibe coding and being an HR builder. And there's Daniel and I have these conversations literally every week. I think since LLMs hit the market, like we haven't had a podcast or off the record conversation without talking about AI. And, we know these conversations can be challenging. Like we're all on unique journeys. Literally the journey for every single company is going to look a little different. And, the tools that you build and the way that you start to stack your AI solutions will look different. And that makes these conversations a little challenging. But, I think the common thread for all of us is that we're all experimenting, we're all learning, and, momentum is building, even if you're at the very, very early part of the journey. So this conversation, we want to highlight each of your unique perspectives for those on the panel. For those of you in the chat, Daniel's kind of our hype man for today, and he will be engaging with you. And we want to hear your unique perspectives. And so there's going to be a lot of different angles that we're going to hit, but I think the key differentiator between this conversation and others that you may sit in on is there's going to be talking, but there's going to be a lot of showing. And so like the demo section of this is going to be amazing. I can't wait to get to that. So with that said, let's go ahead and jump in. Brandon, I want to start with you. And I want to start with you because you are like, I feel like HR and LinkedIn famous now with all the work. You've always been an all-star to us, but I feel like the market is like totally recognizing this and embracing it. And it's just such a joy to see because you've been on your own journey. And I want to talk about that because I know a lot of people come to you for feedback. And so when you think about organizational readiness, what should be on a company's checklist before moving AI initiatives forward?
When people ask me this question, they expect me to say, like choose the right LLM, put the right governance framework in place. All of that's important. I don't think it's the most important thing though. I think leadership, talent, and culture. Like this has been the thing, right? Every business transformation since the beginning of time, like this is the difference maker, right? It's not choosing the perfect tool or vendor. Those are also two-way doors, right? It's not choosing the perfect policy or governance framework. That's going to have to adapt over time anyway, right? All of these tech transformations, AI included, the tech itself is just the means, right? Like organizations need to lead, right? It's like, well, what are the ends? Like, what is it for? Like, why is this the right time for us to rethink ways of working with AI? Um, who are the stakeholders? Like, what's in it for like each type of stakeholder, including employees? Uh, and then there are just other cultural components. Like, do we have clarity on what excellence looks like in our organization? Because if we don't, I don't know what we're building towards. Do we have a culture of experimentation in this organization? Because if not, it's going to be hard to get folks to really try new ways of working. Do we have a culture of intellectual rigor and honesty in the organization? Can people point at something and say it's ugly? Because if we don't, folks will just be on a hype cycle, and we won't really be able to trust or believe in what we are building with AI. And so that's my answer to the question. It's not necessarily the answer people are expecting, but I have like ultra high conviction on this.
I love that. I mean, getting the right people in the right seats with the right perspective. What are some of your biggest learnings? You mentioned, some of your team members are they started at one place, now they're moving on to the next level or kind of evolving these roles over time. And I feel like that's what we're all as HR leaders aspiring to get to. But for those that are at the beginning, like what are some of the biggest lessons learned? Like one or two things just to kind of keep in mind for the HR leader as they start to kind of work through similar or strive to be kind of where you're at.
Yeah, two things in particular. The first is, again, in the spirit of like AI as a tool, not an outcome, is just like ground all of this in the stuff that our teams already wake up, obsessed with every day. Like, what are the biggest business problems we're trying to solve? And then we just ask ourselves, like, how might, right, AI and automation help us take a huge step forward? And then the second thing is your framework for impact has a lot to do with where you end up. At Zapier, we have a three-part framework. We don't do anything with AI unless we've scoped impact around these three things into the equation. The first one's the obvious one, efficiency. So save time and money. The second one, though, is quality. So if we're going to like do something, faster, cheaper, why don't we also do it better while we're at it? I will say, doing those two things together, not always as obvious with other new technologies as I think we're seeing with AI. That's part of what I think is really exciting. But so too is the third piece of the framework for impact, which is while we're improving efficiency and quality, let's make the resulting jobs better for humans. So we call that efficiency, quality, employee experience. And we don't sign up for like a new way of working with AI unless we have a theory on how to improve all three.
I feel like I'm gonna really put a hard barrier for my boundary for myself because there's so much that we could talk about there. But again, we want to show some solutions today, and so I'm gonna keep us moving. Thanks for all of that, Brandon. So shifting gears, like Jenny in our prep, you mentioned the concept of AI debt, and so I want to talk about so now at this portion of the conversation, we're shifting kind of to the next tier up, and so there are amazing things that you will unlock by embracing these superpowers and starting to kind of build out your tech stack. But then with that will come a different set of challenges. And so getting back to this concept or notion of AI debt, like what does that mean to you, and can you walk us through how leaders can manage that debt while still getting some early wins,
Yeah, for
some
sure.
quick W's?
So so it's like, yeah, to your point, these different tiers or these different phases. I watch phase one of the AI journey is just convincing your people to use it and to make it part of their daily workflow. Luckily at Vercel, we are an AI company. We moved through phase one like pretty immediately. Some of the fun ways that we made that happen quickly, we do demo days every Friday. So people were showing up, demonstrating the different ways, kind of like we'll do later, that they're using AI. It was, we incorporated into all of our interview loops. So like it just immediately became part of our daily life. But then we entered into phase two, which is now people are regularly using it. But especially if you're not a developer, you can end up with this quality problem. So Brandon, I like your number two in there. You can end up with a quality problem or this sort of last mile problem where it's like we're full of ideas on the Vercel people team of ways to use AI. We've built total rewards tools so candidates can visualize their comp at various multiples on our growth. We've built org charts where HRBPs can enter notes on org health and individual performance. Some of the things we'll sort of go into later. But to make some of these tools really useful, you have to work through like data sensitivity issues, right? I mean, I just talked about comp and I just talked about individual performance. So you're dealing with data sensitivity issues. You're often API connecting your vibe coding tools like V0 into your HRIS or your ATS, your Slack, whatever. And that stuff is hard. So something I watch is the members of my team go through these mini versions of the Gartner hype cycle, right? So it's like they get that initial excitement, there's lots of building, and then they go through that trough of disillusionment. And it's sort of only when you enter the next stage that you see like real lasting productivity gains. And what I'm finding, and it's fun, Brandon, to hear that you've invested in this at Zapier too, is it's actually helpful to have someone on your team to help usher people into that final stage. So we have someone on our team, he's on this call, Viet Nguyen, who has made a really big focus on an AI enablement for our team. And he's sort of become this like internal AI guru. Now, this is a role that I might have actually shied away from previously, because again, back in phase one, the focus was, no, everybody has to be using AI, right? I don't want to like silo my AI work into one person on the people team. But what I've now realized is, yes, everybody needs to be using it, but to help you get through some of those more complicated things, having one or two people, and I find we have Viet, who's on recruiting ops, and then we also have somebody on our HRBP team who's more of like a program manager. These people who do the deep dives and then can support the rest of your team end up being really important accelerators to help you get through this sort of phase two, where it's like you've created all this debt of just like random stuff you built, but is anybody actually using it? So anyways, I'm definitely seeing this role become much more common. Sounded like at Zapier, it's AI automation engineer. It's this sort of, your chief vibe coder who's making all of these investments.
I love it, and I know when we're starting to hit stride in these live sessions, because I start to see the comments flow in, and so y'all keep it coming. We want to hear like your experiences and what your questions are, and so I'm going to keep us moving. Like we've talked a lot about organizational readiness. We've talked about the tiers of progress, some of the challenges that you may run into as you're kind of moving through these various phases or stages. Now I want to zoom out to a point actually Brandon touched on, in kicking us off, and that is just around like tool set, like the tech stack. And something, Valerie, that you mentioned in our prep call is, it's not always a build conversation. And I actually think there's a Zapier, you guys have some collateral or some thought leadership pieces around, when you build versus when you buy versus when you bought. And so I want to zoom out and I want to think about, how you look at that based on the work that you've done with your clients. How are you looking, or what guidance do you have to provide to HR leaders on how to make decisions within the tech stack? And sometimes there's already something existing in your stack that can be super powerful and can have a transformative impact to the team.
Yeah, I think that's the right way of thinking about it. I mean, kind of like we were hearing from Jenny, like, start with what you already have. Start with what you already have. All of this is about like solving the problems we already care about. And so, for example, I'll talk with even folks who are looking into Zapier, like other chief people officers and what have you, and they're like, should I get Zapier? And I'm like, oh, I don't know. What are you trying? What are your most important problems? And usually what I see is, there's a at least modest to meaningful fraction of the things they're trying to do. I'll be like, hey, do you already have like an enterprise grade LLM? I'm like, well, yeah, we did that last year. I'm like, okay, we'll see how far you can get with that, right? Because especially like if you don't need to connect, a lot of applications to get the job done, or this, that, or the next thing, depending on your controls, like you might be able to get a fair amount of mileage from that. It's also a tool that the team is likely already very familiar with, so it's gonna be a great way to start experimenting and building and learning quickly. So you might find that kind of an ironic answer from someone who's like very bullish on builder tools like Vercel and Zapier and what have you, but that's still my recommendation for getting started. Now, it doesn't take long, as you kind of like move up the potential for value list, within like HR use cases and jobs to be done before you realize like, no, it's actually also very helpful for many organizations to have, one or more of these builder tools. But again, the other thing that's really empowering about it is that the capability of these builder tools is growing, but so is their ease of use. And so you don't always see those two things moving in the same direction at the same time. But for HR teams, I think that's part of what's really interesting right now.
And Valerie, you mentioned in our prep that, thank you, Brandon. That was all. I think that's great perspective. And Valerie, there were some additional points that you mentioned, that including a concept of an HR data agent, which I thought was super cool, super compelling. So, tell us a little bit about that, and add on anything that Brandon just shared.
Yeah, definitely. I totally agree with you, Brandon. I think sometimes we're thinking, okay, what do I need to add onto my tech stack in order to leverage AI? And if we've been wondering as HR professionals, how do we integrate AI? Tech companies, that your providers, your HR tool providers are thinking that even more and thinking, how do I get ahead of the game and make sure that I also integrate AI in the way that we are building our products? And some companies are actually rebuilding completely so that they don't accumulate debt, but rebuilding completely at a super fast velocity to make sure that they do stay ahead of the game. So sometimes it's not about building ourselves, but looking at what's already existing in the tech stack that I have. And like you said, it's already familiar, so it's easier to catch on. There's often features like predictive attrition insights, automated goal alignment, AI coach for performance management that we don't need to build because it's already been integrated in some of our products. But if you are working with a leaner stack, because we're not all at the same size or stage, or we don't have the same tech stack, there's still a huge opportunity. You can centralize, you can make sure that you have clean data and centralize the data that you already have in a super simple way. Something we did internally is created an HR data agent, and that was through a custom GPT. And we just, thought about what are some of the fundamentals that we already have that we don't need to, it's not hard to centralize and to have access to. I'm thinking things like demographics, attrition trends, engagement scores, or maybe more qualitative feedback that comes from stay interviews, exit interviews, HRBP notes, and you can centralize that super easily and use a custom GPT to help you identify patterns, segment risks, surface root causes. So that's super easy to do with the information you already have. So depending on where you are on the spectrum of, if you already have a tech stack, look at what the capabilities are, what are the new capabilities that they've built that you can take advantage of. And if not, you can build something in-house super easily because connecting different data sources has become a lot more easily. So basically, like just the quick wins, activate what you already pay for, and unlock the power that the data that you have just by connecting it.
Mm-hmm.
Love it. Love all of this. Well, like I said, we could keep talking. I feel like any one of these questions could be an entire webinar or podcast on its own. But I want to move to what we hopefully will use the lion's share the rest of the time we have together, and that's exploring what's possible with AI in HR today. And I have been very vocal about vibe coding and the possibilities that unlocks for teams. I've also been very vocal about just the role that AI will have in the future workplace. I believe there will be no aspect of a company that will remain untouched by AI. It's just going to be massive. And sometimes I feel like I'm like a this weird, evangelist guy who is just kind of preaching, talking about these crazy things, but we get to see these amazing solutions that have literally been built by HR leaders, by humans, for humans. And so the next segment is kind of our rapid fire segment. We put a new twist on that though, and it's a demo day twist. So each of you will demo a solution that you have built. And I want to start with you, Valerie, since we just wrapped up with you. I think we'll just segue first into your demo. So, Daniel shared with me, I've heard rumors that you have been dogfooding some of the cool new features that the team has built at WorkLeap. So show us what you got.
Yeah, thanks, Stephen. I'm going to try to fit in 3 very quick demos. I'm going to start with performance management. So we were in charge of performance management internally, and I have to say that it's always been not the most optimal process. And for having spoken to so many people in HR organizations, it always feels sort of like too heavy for HR teams, for managers alike. Feels like a tick in the box. Are we really doing the right thing? Like, who has a performance management process that feels, lightweight, engaging, that actually works and gets people to, perform and thrive. So that's really something that we wanted to unlock. And we've worked with the product team to improve the process. It's highly leveraging AI, both for HR teams putting together the process and, kicking off a review cycle, and for managers who spend so long in traditionally doing reviews. So I want to share what that looks like with you. There we go. Okay. I hope everybody can see.
It looks great. Yeah, we can
Yeah.
see it.
Okay, great. So the first quick demo I want to share is how you can how we created a way to more easily create a review cycle between thinking about the questions, making sure you have the right versions for manager, peer, and self-review, automating the whole process, analyzing the whole process. So I'm going to show you how you can create a review cycle a lot easier leveraging AI. So let's say, I'm starting from sort of scratch. I sort of know I want to do a 360 review, but I wanted just a general idea. I can just type in, I want to run a 360 review with max 10 questions. So there we go. We're going to click it. Obviously, it takes a few seconds to generate it, but basically that's just a starting point. It's a very simple prompt. Some people already know that they want to go the 360 review way, but they don't really know and they want to cap it to a certain number of questions, but they don't want to, but they don't know what should be in there, how many sections. And so here we go. And I don't know how many seconds that was, maybe 20 seconds. You have 360-degree performance review. And here you have different sections. It told me it kept it at 10. I hope it kept its promise. You have the manager version, you have the self version, and you have the peer version. And then here you can go and ask for edits. I could go and ask for edits there. I can say, so let's say I'm going to go and ask for edits. I say, I want to incorporate our company values. I'm just going to pretend that resilience, collaboration, and grit. So you can go there, and those are not Workly's values. I just winged some company values. They sound great. And I can go here. It's working on it. So let's see how it's going to incorporate that. Obviously, takes a few seconds, but much less time than if we were to, the traditional way is more around typing the questions in a Word and then adapting. Here we go. Where are my company values? Here, values and behaviors. So it was incorporated in a section here. We can, it even added some, but we can go with that and ask for edits and, say, oh no, actually I want 1 question per value. I want to change the rating scale, and it will change the rating scale right away for all of the versions. So that took me a few minutes. Obviously, there's a bit of work. I'm not going to pretend that in 15 seconds you're ready to launch, but that already creates so much value for HR teams that they don't have to start from scratch, and they can actually, see right away in sort of like one shot what the reviews are going to look like. And that's based on best practices. You can clearly set an evaluation period, the dates, and then who are going to be participants, exclude anybody that you need to exclude, and launch it. I want to show you now what happens when the manager gets to do their review. Because again, managers spend so much time doing manager reviews. I think Gartner says 210 hours per year. That is a lot of time. Obviously, that includes all performance management activities, not only reviews, but there is definitely a way to do that better. So I just clicked on, my team members review, and I have AI generate a first review here. So what's interesting is here I have the highlights and top strengths, growth opportunities, and those are the sources that are connected. And part of the difficulty in doing performance reviews is managers have to sit down and be like, okay, Kiara, what did she work on? What did she lead? And, you know, some people have annual reviews. Even if you have a quarterly review, it's tough to remember what did Kiara lead in the last 3 months. And here you can really see what are my different sources that are connected. I clicked here on source. Okay, so it's going to incorporate the Kiara self-review and suggestion a manager review. It's going to incorporate peer reviews that the peers from Kiara had submitted. Goals, if Kiara has no goals, I can, deactivate that. Okay, good vibes she's received, so any recognition she received. Here are the Slack channels that are even included. So if Kiara's in those public Slack channels and she's, leading projects and posting about that, and people are really like showcasing or reacting to the impact she's having, that can be taken into consideration. Confluence pages, SharePoint, anyways, you get the idea. And then I can start write you, and I can even say, hey, help me answer, what stands out about the impact this Kiara's having on the team? Help me answer that. Okay, help me answer. It's going to think and help me answer. This is Kiara's impact. This is what she's led. And that's solely based on her self-review, the Confluence pages, the Slack channels, so the connected sources. So in your organization, you can connect all the sources and surface the actual impact that people have had. That saves a ton of time. And I'm just going to go back to your framework, Brandon. Efficiency, quality, because it's based on the data. It's not just based on people's memory, and subjective, like, oh, I like Kiara, we have lunch together. I mean, obviously, that's not why we hold our managers to a higher standard, but we know that plays. And employee experience, people have had a wow factor. Like, okay, if you help me answer, I already know what to start from. And that makes it so much better that, people have said that it cuts the time that they're spending doing manager reviews from 50 to 70%. So really plays into those three elements. Do I have time for one last demo?
Unfortunately, I think we need to move
that's
on.
fine.
But if
All
we have
right.
time, I would
No,
love to
of
come
course.
back. We'll see.
Of course, no problem.
Next up, no time for chit chat yet. Hopefully, we'll have some time at the end to answer questions and kind of reflect on each other's demos. Jenny, you have a really cool use case that you're going to share with us, a couple actually. So we'll turn it over to you.
Yeah, so to set the stage, Vercel cares a lot about people working in public. So one of our company values is ITG, which is iterate to great. And it's this idea that rather than like building something over here, waiting for it to be perfect and then shipping it, like you should ship early and often. And that's how you get feedback and you're able to improve. And we try and live the same value in Slack. So no DMs, all of the things that you're slacking should be in channels, preferably public channels. So this is something we emphasize to all of our new hires, and we talk about it a lot, but we always struggle to actually get people to stop putting things in DMs because it can be really intimidating to ask your questions or do work in public. So I thought a really fun way to kind of bring this one to life was Fiat on this call just took Slack Analytics. So everybody has access to Slack Analytics. You can see your message count. You can see what percentage of those messages is in DMs and what percent is in channels. And he just took those analytics and like quickly built this in V0. And we created a leaderboard. And at the beginning of November, I launched a November challenge for the people team, which was to get at least 70% of your total messages in channels rather than DMs. So this is like some of the progress. It's a leaderboard. There's just like some very simple things where you can filter onto your correct division. You can see I'm not yet practicing what I'm preaching, but I think I started at like 38%. So I will be appreciative of progress. I liked this example. It's very simple. It doesn't take too long to build, but people leaders, like we have this challenge where to a certain extent, the people team is responsible for like driving culture. But obviously we all know that we can't just drive culture single-handedly. This is like a activity participated in by the whole company and by the whole leadership team. But I thought finding this just like, I don't know, again, it was a challenge. We gamified it. It makes it very visual. What percentage of your company is working in public, was a fun way to bring a cultural value to life in a way that we never had before. And we have like immediately seen improvements. Again, I bang this drum all the time, and this is the first time we've actually seen changes in people's behavior to the percent of messages that they're sending in channels versus DMs on Slack. So that was the first one I wanted to show. And the next one I'll go to is another one. So this one, we were talking about, getting to real productivity improvements requires actually building some more complicated stuff. And there was a lot that went into this one. Viet, you can drop sort of the various steps you were texting me about yesterday that were involved in building IntroView. But on a recruiting team, finding the right candidates is just part of the battle. You then also have to put them through a highly effective interview. And many of the people on this call, right, we're on people teams. We've probably done thousands of interviews. We put in our 10,000 hours. Like, we're probably quite good at interviewing. We have that spidey sense around what questions to ask, what makes a good interview. But many of the people at your company who are interviewing do not. And it is often, for some, their very first time to actually be conducting interviews. So we built this tool that actually takes your BrightHire transcript. So we add BrightHire to all of our interviews, and it takes the transcript, it sends that to an LLM, and it gets an analysis of, were you very good in that interview? Did you ask the right questions? Did you dig deep? Which is another one of our values. And it's connected to Slack, and it just Slacks it to you. So you can see this is an interview I did yesterday. It tells me a couple of ideas of what went well. It talks a little bit about some of the questions that I could have asked. And it gives some context that ties back, again, ITG, one of our values. So we have been exploring for a long time, how do we actually improve interview quality? You can't be in the room. You can't actually be in every single interview that's happening. So how do you know if it's good? So I really quite like this tool to help us improve and sort of get better visibility into that. And I'll show one. I'm kind of like Valerie. I'm like, I also have a third. What do we think? Is there time, or should I pass it to Brandon?
I think you got a few more minutes.
Okay, cool. The last one, I like this one. It's fun. I'm sure it's very relatable. Especially if you're early in your AI journey, creating a custom GPT is a pretty simple thing to do. And especially because I was talking about employer brand sort of at the top of the hour. Something we think a lot about at Vercel right now is voice, and are you speaking in the company voice when you're reaching out to prospects, when you're reaching out to candidates, when you're posting on LinkedIn, on X, whatever it may be. So this was just a fun thing. It's actually, this one's not from the people team. It's from someone on our sales team, but we've built many similar things on the sales team, which is so Guillermo Rausch is our CEO, and somebody just built a custom GPT that like puts things in his voice. He's a very sort of succinct and direct speaker. He has a very particular style. He posts a ton on X, so it's easy to feed a bunch of examples of what his sort of tone and style of voice is. And you can come in here and just ask it very simple questions. How would you pitch Vercel to a CTO, for example? And it spits out easy email for, an SDR or BDR to use. And I could ask it the same thing, how would you pitch Vercel to an engineering candidate? And it would give us something useful for the recruiting team to use. So I like this one just because, if you are kind of early in your journey, take a shot at a custom GPT. It's in the sort of easier to cook on things to do.
Oh my God, this has already been a joy. We're only 2/3 of the way into the demo segment. So bring it home, Brandon. Show us what you got. You've got a really cool thing. Daniel?
Real quick, Jenny, could you just speak to how easy it is to vibe code? I feel like a lot of people are vibe coding curious, but maybe aren't brave enough to go in there and try it for themselves. Can you just speak to how easy it is to get started?
Like as easy as typing a sentence into Slack. So obviously I'm gonna promote V0. That is a Vercel product. That's the one I use on a regular basis. So if you open up V0, there's plenty you can do on the free tier. Just go in. It's natural language. You just ask it what you want to build, and you hit enter, and it will build. Start with something simple. You don't have to immediately go to like one shot creating some like super complicated app. But again, just emphasis that you get to use natural language. You do not have to know anything about coding to be able to build and to be able to vibe code. Emphasis on the vibe, less on the coding.
And to add to that, because you took us here, Daniel, I love Claude. In fact, I have a personal CTO in Claude that helps guide me every step of the way with my vibe coding. And so, was new to me because I previously at Modern People Leader, we use ChatGPT for everything. And so it's been really cool to kind of branch out and use some of the other LLMs. And I hear some of the others are really good also, but that's what I use. So with that said, Brandon, you're up last, but certainly not least. So show us what you got.
All right, let's do it. Jenny, you and I had on a similar wavelength with this first job to be done that I'm going to describe, and it is around hiring, and in particular, it's around improving not just speed to new requisition setup, but also improving the quality of all the collateral. Right, every time our teams are getting ready to hire, we need to work with the hiring manager on a job description and a rubric, hopefully, right? If we're doing like kind of like structured hiring, a interview guide, and the list goes on and on. It can take hours, but I don't actually think that's the most important like problem there. I think it's usually like standardization and quality of all of that. Like, are we taking a JD to market that's really going to sing, right? Are we do we have like a really strong rubric, and are we asking questions that are really going to get to the heart of the qualifications on the rubric? It's not easily done. And sometimes we have plenty of hiring managers that might just be hiring for 1 or 2 roles a year. So it's not the type of thing that hiring teams often get in enough practice of to be routinely good at it without a co-pilot. And so what we'll demo first is effectively what we called AI-powered hiring plans at Zapier. And one of the skill sets that I've been working on with my team as it relates to re-engineering work with AI is actually marketing. Because we're inviting folks in to like do a thing that they're used to doing a certain way, usually mostly manually, and now do it with the help of more automation and AI. And we don't require most of these things on purpose, right? It's like if we do a great job of marketing, like from the perspective of the end user, which is a hiring manager in this case, like we understand your pain. We have a shared understanding what excellence looks like, but this is the crap that usually gets in the way. And then, right? AI-powered hiring plan, workflow is meant to help with exactly that thing, right? But we do it in the language that the end user would immediately recognize in terms of their day-to-day experience as a hiring manager. And so, yes, here you have it. Kick off hiring in minutes with AI-built job descriptions, application questions, and interview guides that reflect your company's unique voice and values. Well, that's interesting. That sounds like marketing copy. That doesn't sound like my team's normal document, HR workflow documentation from 3 years ago, because it's not. We've actually had a couple folks from our marketing team do some like training or skill building with the folks on my team who ship a lot of these new ways of working. Okay, so what does it do? It starts with a chatbot, and this is it right here. Just a friendly chatbot, and it's basically going to do the intake with the hiring manager, and it's going to convert that raw material using our standards and a database of actual job descriptions, rubrics, and interview guides for the same or similar roles. And it's going to then convert that into something I'll show you in a minute. But here's a chatbot, right? Hey, let's get started. Who are you? Tell me a little bit more about the recruiter you're working with and the job, so on and so on. What it's seeing here is that it doesn't have something in the database related to exactly the job that I put in. So it's like, okay, why don't you just take it from the top? Give me some things here. We want folks to be able to engage with this. So here's like, hey, like, I don't know, like I haven't hired for this role in a while. Like what typically are we looking for a role of this type? So it's pulling from our knowledge layer and it's saying, hey, here are some of the things that we most commonly look for. Do you want to adapt that? And for the purposes of this demo, I said, actually, that sounds pretty good. That's a few more prompts and primers. And then importantly, really clear on the next step. So thanks for all of that. It's going to automatically add the hiring manager to a hiring channel, which is in Slack in our case, but you could put it anywhere. You could do it over email or Teams. You plug in your tools, right? So it's going to get the hiring manager and the recruiter in the same channel, along with the doc that this is creating. And so the doc itself, coming back here as an example, is going to look a little bit like this. It's going to be a Google Doc in this case, but again, you use your tools. This could be a Coda page, a Notion page. It could be a Microsoft Word doc, like, whatever the case may be. And it has these different, first it's got like TLDR, what's in the doc. Showing receipts with AI workflows is really helpful. And so you see actually the very second page in that on the left-hand side is form responses, right? This helps us with debugging, for example. It's like, that was an interesting output. It's like, what did that hiring manager put in there exactly, right? It's all in there right in this doc. But then you have the three things that we talked about earlier. You have the, a job description, the application questions, and then the interview questions page includes the rubric and the interview guide itself. And the list goes on and on. So there it is, massive head start. We 2 to 3 hours of time saved per new rec setup across the hiring manager and the recruiter. But more importantly, like we heard from both Jenny and Valerie, like I think long-term for Zapier in terms of like raising the talent bar, I don't care if it saves 1 minute. If it meaningfully improves like the rigor and quality of these hiring docs, which really are the basis for strong recruiting, then that's worth it by itself. But the great thing is we don't have to choose between quality and efficiency. We get both. And then of course, it removes some toil, from the job of the hiring manager and the recruiter in this case. This is a little example of the automation that's set up to kick off the hiring channel, kind of outlines the next steps and what have you. Okay, last but not least, that's the front. That's like the front end. Here's the back end. This is a Zapier canvas that has the whole workflow laid out. And if you can believe it, this is a template. I'm going to share it in the chat. Anyone can take a look at what I'm looking at right now. There it is. But what's neat about this is, and you can do this for your own teams, right? Strong documentation of what people are building is so important. And it's all the better if that documentation can live where the work is being automated. And that's exactly what this is. So a Zapier canvas includes what problem are we solving here? How does it work? Who's accountable for this at the company if I have questions? But then also like, this is actually the workflow. Like this is what is built. This is how everything we talked about actually works. And it's a combination of, you've got the chatbot, you've got several automations, you have the knowledge layer, all those prior job descriptions, specs, and so on that's stored in a Zapier table, but you could point it anywhere that you store knowledge in your organization. And then you see some of those output steps here, like creating the hiring plan doc, that little blue one, that's a Google Doc, et cetera, and then setting up the Slack channel at the very end. So that's Zapier Canvas. It's a way to use all of the different builder tools that you can do with something like Zapier, automations, AI steps, front-end interfaces, chatbots, databases, and so on, but in a way that makes it easier for other people in the organization to like pick up that workflow at some point and actually figure out how you built it and what it's for. So that's the first one. I've got another really quick one, 90 seconds.
Go for
let's
it.
do it. All right, here's one this is just a personal one for me. So we don't have a formal alumni engagement program at Zapier. And I don't think most of our companies do, to be perfectly honest. But there are a couple things that I've set up to stay engaged with the alumni that we were really sad to see leave the company. I have one, for example, that reaches out 2 months after somebody, these are people who left on great terms. Right? These like regrettable voluntary exits. So it pulls it out of the HRIS. It then waits 2 months and then it drafts an email for me. These are people I know usually, so I don't automatically send it. This is a great design question. Where do you keep the humans in the loop? Well, I want to stay in the loop there because I don't want to send some random templated email. Like sometimes these are people I worked with for years, but it does save me a lot of time and it automatically nudges me. I get a draft in my inbox. I get a Slack notification. Hey, this week we dropped these drafts for these 3 folks who left a couple months ago. Take a look and shoot those off. So I never used to have time to do this. And I wouldn't be doing it today if it weren't for that. Interestingly, that's not this. This is an agent that does another thing related to alumni engagement. This one, when folks leave the company, also on good terms, it looks over all of our interactions together and it makes a judgment call on whether we have worked closely enough together that I can write them a LinkedIn recommendation. This is another just like nice thing to do. Like people remember, especially if they didn't ask you, like proactively, like a really specific, helpful LinkedIn recommendation. And on the right-hand side, you can see my like latest test that I did here. Actually, wow, we were all on this. So I did a little test so I could show you it live. I said, hey, test it with this person. And so it's like looking at the individual, it's like looking at all the knowledge and so on. Here's a neat thing about an agent. When I tested this like 20 minutes ago, this particular like knowledge aggregation step failed. There's like something going on with the API, but because it's an agent, it doesn't stop. It's like, I know the mission. I know what you're trying to do here. I have access. I gave it access, right? It doesn't have access to anything I don't give it access to, right? But I give it access to certain things within Slack. So it said, well, I can't do it using Glean, but I'm going to look at everything I can find on Slack for you and see if I can make a call. Did you work with this person well enough to write a helpful LinkedIn recommendation? And in this case, the answer was no, nope. And the truth of the matter is that is the right judgment call. I did not work closely enough with this person to write a LinkedIn recommendation. And so the last step is it just sends me a DM, said, hey, I did the analysis just like you asked him, just so you know, I know this person left, but I don't think you knew him well enough to write a recommendation. If the answer was yes, and this is in the middle pane right here, I've trained it on specific examples of prior LinkedIn recommendations that I wrote by hand, and it would use that to pattern match my voice, my tone, how I like to write these, and it would send me a Slack message with say like, hey, this says, this person left, and you apparently did work with them closely enough, and here's something you can copy and paste into their LinkedIn profile. So those are the two I wanted to share today.
First of all, if you have ever had to demo live, it is excruciatingly nerve-wracking. And I want to thank Valerie, Jenny, Brandon for trusting us to do this, because we were like, hey, what about this idea we have? And this was absolutely amazing. You totally delivered. I think we only have less than 10 minutes. I know there've got to be questions in there.
Well, real quick, Stephen, Valerie, she has one last demo that she said will take 1 minute.
All
and I want to
right.
make sure we get all the
90
demos
seconds.
in.
The same 90
That's
seconds
perfect.
as Brandon.
I'm timing
kidding.
you.
Okay, let me open it. I mean, so I'm taking you completely somewhere else, but I'm going more towards predictive analysis, and we all have a certain number of data related to engagement in our organization. I think for so long we've been thinking, okay, there's a drop in alignment in our organization, but like, what does that mean? What do I do? And we're finally at the point where we can actually do something with that. So I just want to share a little bit more around, like, we pushed the product team again to be a little bit more specific and predictive in what we can do. What does that mean when there's a drop in alignment? We have so much feedback from engagement data. What do we do with that? So I just want to share very quickly what has been made possible. So, and again, most engagement tools have that right now. So analyze feedback. This is the feedback from the engagement data, all of the qualitative feedback in the organization. So it tells me how much feedback do I have in the period that I selected here, that was 3 months. What do I need to know? Okay, key points I need to know, why it matters, and what I can do next. And what can I do? Again, I can ask it for recommendations here. How do I improve cross-team recognition if that's a problem? One thing that I like to do is say, write me an exec summary for my board, real short and action oriented. Maybe I'm already gone over my minute, but basically I can prompt it to be more specific to what I want. I can train it to say, okay, that's actually a bit long for my board. They like it even shorter. Well, that's pretty short. So these are the sort of like recommendations that have worked with my board in the past. Please do something similar with the current data or the current trends that are happening in the organization. So I took you somewhere else completely, but that's where we're at and what's made possible right now. We can actually take action on the quantity of feedback that organizations are getting.
As a former engagement survey company startup CEO, like it's so amazing what you just demoed and how valuable that is. Like, I can't tell you the number of HR leaders that just like ditch the findings from or the data that is sitting in the engagement survey tool and cobble together a different Google slide presentation to present to the board when it's like, what are we doing here, y'all? The data is literally sitting here. Why aren't we using this? And so I think that was a great way to wrap up the demo. Thank you. Daniel, I'm handing over to you. You have a very tough job of answering questions in 3
Well,
minutes or less.
the problem is we don't have time for Q&A, but we do have
Uh,
time for one word or phrase close.
Oof,
So
okay.
we
It's a good
respond, yeah,
trade-off.
we end every episode the same way, and that's with something called one word or phrase close. And it's just to I guess, summarize how you're feeling as you leave this call. And so, Brandon, I'm going to pick on you. What's your one word or phrase close?
Power to the people. Everything we just demoed, like our own practitioners can do right now.
Valerie, you want to go next?
I want to experiment, experiment, experiment. That's what I'm left with.
I'll say inspired, and I'm going to hand it over to Steven.
I'm gonna go with innovate. Like this is all so cool. It's 2025, y'all, and we're doing cool shit together. And thank you for our panelists today. Thank you for everyone that joined. We of course will share all of the everything we
And don't forget
covered.
about Jenny. We got
Oh,
Jenny for
Jenny. Oh, my bad, Jenny. Jenny. Dang, I was just gonna cut you off. Sorry.
I'll go with like relieved. So much of what we demoed here takes the job off of the onus off the people team to like constantly be pestering with like, please, like, do your intake call for the role you're trying to kick off. Like, please, like, fill out your engagement surveys. Please write your performance reviews. Like, that's the least good part of our jobs. And what's really nice about a lot of what I got to see from both Valerie and Brandon is it sort of like relieves us of that burden.
Guys, thank y'all so much for joining. This was awesome. Workleap team, thanks for partnering with us on this. I think this has been my favorite webinar that we've done so far. This is great. And one last thing before we close this out,
Oh,
if you
Katie.
want the step-by-step breakdown of everything that they just demoed, we've got a playbook that's coming your way. So whenever you exit the webinar, there's going to be a quick survey, one question. All you have to do is click yes, and we'll make sure that we send that over to you when it's ready. It'll probably be like 2 or 3 days, but great webinar. Thank you everybody for joining, and we'll see you in the
Keep
next one.
building.
Yeah,
Keep
keep
building,
building.
y'all. Bye.
Bye, guys.